there because earnings, they're still coming. You got FedEx and Nike after the bell today. All right, Nathan Dean was here yesterday, and now he's back in D.C. I can't keep track on that.
He's got the whole Acela thing going.
Yeah. All right, Nathan Dean, Bloomberg Intelligence Senior Policy Analyst, joins us now from D.C. And we had a totally different conversation yesterday, Nathan, when it came to politics. And then today it's like, oh, wait, maybe there will be a shutdown on Friday. Oh, wait, maybe the debt ceiling is in play now rather than in the summer. What is your take and consensus on what's going to happen?
Yeah, so yesterday I said there was a 20% chance of a government shutdown. I'm only going to go to 40%, so I think I'm out of consensus here. But what I'm saying is that I think we're going to have a 40% chance of a government shutdown by Monday. So tomorrow night, obviously the government shuts down at midnight unless a continuing resolution has been passed. But we've seen in the past before, Congress sometimes takes the weekend to figure out a deal. And I think despite all the bluster and the political posturing you're seeing at the moment, I think a deal can be made for a clean CR plus disaster aid plus potentially the one-year extension of the Farm Bill. Because if something doesn't happen, that Farm Bill and the impact on farmers is going to be substantial in 2025 if the government shuts down. And I think that's going to be what finally gets this deal over the edge. But like you said, the debt ceiling's now involved, and there's going to be a lot more political hiccups to come, certainly over the next few weeks and months.
All right. From my perspective, the politics and the people involved seem a little squirrely to me. I've got a president-elect, and I got some civilian dude really weighing in on this issue in a big way and moving markets. Yet I have a president who's actually sitting in the chair, and I don't hear anything. What's going on in Washington? What are you guys doing down there?
Yeah, so essentially what the Democrats are doing right now is essentially letting the Republicans try and figure out what is the base case scenario. All these negotiations that you may know are taking place in the House with Speaker of the House Mike Johnson. And he was the one that negotiated a deal that Elon Musk and then later President Trump came in and said, no, we're not comfortable with. So what you need right now is the Republicans to come on board with an idea of a bill that will pass the House. And we've even seen Senator Majority Leader Chuck Schumer say, you look, from the Senate perspective, we're just going to let the House figure it out first, and then we'll deal with it. And that's where the debt ceiling eventually comes in because, look, you can't really get a debt ceiling deal, I don't think, within another, like, say, 24 hours. These usually take weeks and months to hash out. And if the Republicans decide to move forward with a 2-year extension of the debt ceiling, more often than not, Republicans also insist on cuts as a result of that. So I think what will happen here is the Democrats sort of way back and they say, okay, Speaker of the House Mike Johnson, you figure it out. You come up with a plan. You get this plan through the House. And then if that's the case, then we'll move forward and we'll deal with it on the Senate side. Because for everything you're talking about, just remember, this has to be bipartisan because you need 7 Democrats. I'm sorry, you're going to need a lot of Democrats to come forth and get this through on the Senate side.
Is the debt ceiling really in play?
You know, obviously, I think President Trump, when he made the statement earlier today that they should abolish the debt ceiling, that's something the Democrats would actually welcome. We saw Senator Elizabeth Warren even say that she would support President Trump on that matter. I think that was also a way for President Trump potentially to give Speaker Johnson a way out, saying, look, if we can't get the debt ceiling done, but from the market perspective, what I would say is the deadline is not December 31st. That's only the date in which Treasury can use extraordinary measures to keep our funding. The actual X date, if you will, is sometime next summer. So from the market perspective, or in terms of government shutdowns and debt ceilings and so forth, we're not seeing much impact from all this political posturing at the moment.
What's the feeling in Washington, Nathan, about the status of Speaker Johnson? Because it feels like he's really under the gun here from all sides.
Yeah, you know, if we had this conversation last week, I'd say it's fairly comfortable in terms of his position, but today it's not. Senator Rand Paul even floated the idea of potentially having Elon Musk to be the Speaker of the House, because you don't have to be a member of the House of Representatives to be the Speaker. Now, I don't think that's going to happen, but a lot of the Johnson allies, if you will, have been sort of questioning whether or not he has the chops for the job early next year. And, you know, that election is going to take place on January 3rd. So I'm not exactly sure I'd be comfortable if I was in Speaker Johnson's position. But that being said, I don't know anybody else who wants the job.
Wait, but let's get back to the Elon Musk thing, because I don't think I think I knew that, but then I think I forgot it, and then now I know it again. So just walk me through. So anyone can be Speaker of the House, like my mom could be Speaker of the House if she gets enough votes?
Yeah, you know, if Paul wants to get back, you know, get into government service, we can have Paul be Speaker of the House. You know, essentially, it's something that goes back to obviously through the Constitution days and so forth. But there's been a lot of talk over the last few years about potentially having President Trump become Speaker of the House during the Biden administration. Obviously, that didn't go anywhere. But the reason why Elon Musk would not want to be Speaker of the House is because, yes, you get to use the bully pulpit and you get to decide what's on the floor. but you also have to get into the nitty-gritty and manage all 220 Republican members next year when you only have a majority of 5. And that is an extremely difficult position when you have to make tough choices like, am I going to shut the government down, or am I going to extend the Farm Bill 1 year and provide all this relief to the American farmer base? That's a tough choice, and that's why I don't think the Elon Musk rumor, if you will, is a serious one.
Okay.
Okay, we're still processing.
We're still processing. I also just feel like, I mean, can you imagine like running the house, or being part of SpaceX, running your AI company, running Tesla? And there's a lot going on there. Okay, so give me some. Well, let's go back and talk about playbook. So we have learned what maybe a Trump playbook for 2025 then looks like. Is this what we can start expecting, right? Like the Congress does something, and then Musk, Ramaswamy, and Trump kind of weigh in different ways, and then that affects policy. Is this going to be the state of play?
I think so. I mean, obviously, a lot has to happen, but I think, one of the biggest issues, if you will, is if they pass a continuing resolution that kicks this into March, now you've got a funding fight within the first 100 days of President Trump's presidency. And it's usually when presidents don't want to deal with funding because they want to use their political capital on things like immigration, border, potentially in this case, a reconciliation package for tax extensions. But if this government funding fight kicks the can to March, now you're going to have Elon Musk tweeting out there saying, look, we need to delete the CFPB or get rid of the Department of Education. And at that point, you are going to need 7 Democrats in the Senate to agree. You most likely won't. And now you're going to have a government shutdown. Is that a fight that President Trump wants to have within the first 100 days of his presidency? We really don't know. It just depends on the politics per se. But I will say is that we do think a prolonged shutdown, whether it's in March or September of next year, I would bet on September, a prolonged shutdown of 2 to 3, 4, 5 weeks potentially could happen because right now both parties are saying, look, we're sitting pretty comfortable with the positions that we have.
All right, let's go to what was a front page topic a matter of a week or two ago, which are some of these nominations that had to get Senate confirmation in January. Any update on some of the more contentious ones? Mr. Hegseth, Tulsi Gabbard, RFK Jr., just to name a few?
Yeah, so they're making the rounds on Capitol Hill as we speak. I mean, Senator Fetterman from Pennsylvania met with Pete Hegseth earlier this week. And RFK Jr. is making the rounds today. I would just say that, I think right now and for the rest of December, it's really just going to be more of these like photo meet and greets and so forth like that. We're not seeing a ton of pushback on Pete Hegseth like we saw a week ago, but I think a lot of the fireworks will come down to these committee hearings and obviously these nomination hearings because a lot of the tough questions are going to be asked, and these are going to be asked from both Republicans and Democrats. And so for somebody like Tulsi Gabbard, if a senior Democrat begins to really question on some of those positions, things could potentially unravel. But I will say, remember, the Republicans are going to have 53 in the Senate next year, which means you can afford to lose 4. And so, many of these cases, I think it's going to be pressure for them to withdraw because the votes may be there for them to get across the line.
Amazing. It's going to be fascinating to sort of watch how all of this winds up playing out. We also heard over the we heard it yesterday, we've had about 24 hours to digest, is that the Supreme Court is going to take up that TikTok version. What do we make of that? Like, how do you think that's going to play out in D.C.?
Yeah, so my colleague Matt Shettenhelm and I were talking about this yesterday, and I really ranged his head on this. This is a question of, this law was scheduled to go into effect January 19th, one day before the inauguration. And there wasn't really, just remember, we're talking about a law here. And so if you want to undo the law, you either need the courts to come in and say it's unconstitutional, or Congress has to pass a new law. And so there isn't really much of a magic wand that President Trump could do on day one unless the Supreme Court were to give that magic wand to him. He could certainly say to the Department of Justice, yes, you don't have to enforce this. But from the Apple perspective or any other company that offers it on their app store, that's actually not a very comfortable position because you want to essentially be able to say that President Trump can't change his mind 3 months from now, or a new Democratic administration 4 years from now could say to Apple, look, we understand that, you've been operating against the law. Here's a multi-billion-dollar enforcement action for your problem. So the Supreme Court case is going to be extremely key to whether or not Apple gets any of this clarity going forward and what essentially that law entails.
All right, Nathan, thank you so much for joining us. Nathan Dean, he's our go-to person down in Washington, D.C. as it pertains to all that policy stuff there. And I think we're going to be talking a lot to him in the coming days, weeks, and months, and maybe the next 4 years.